So your car stereo is not performing to where you think it should be. You want better sound. And I'm assuming also that you're not the person that wants to knock down buildings or do hair tricks. You just want something that sounds good, has impact, and feels like a live performance, and sounds better than whatever you're running right now. So I'm going to go over a few steps to solve that problem. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because everybody has a different level of where they want to go. These are the steps in order of the things you should do first, second, third, fourth, and then stop whenever you like what you've got. Okay? So we're going to start out with fixing what's wrong. If you have anything that's broken currently that you're not planning on replacing in the next step, then replace it with factory or fix it. For example, if you have a blown speaker, torn speaker, wiring is messed up, something's shorting out, things of that nature, fix the problem now. And then once you get the things that are working properly, of course, again, if you're not planning on replacing these items, once you get everything working properly, we'll move to step 2. Step 2. One of the biggest improvements you can make in a car stereo system is to add a subwoofer and an amplifier for that subwoofer. At this point, you've got a lot of options you can go down, lots of different roads. If you're in a pickup truck, you're going to be limited on box size and speaker size to an extent. But of course, that depends on just how much you're willing to modify the interior of your vehicle and how much space you're willing to give up. But we're going to assume that you want to keep that space usable and keep it looking factory-ish. We're going for a 95% factory look in this whole tutorial, okay? In that case, you're going to want something like in a pickup truck, you're going to want underneath the seat speakers or behind the seat speakers, something that'll give you some low end and not take up any extra room that you could use for people. In the amplifier department, you've got a couple of different ways you can go in this too. If you think you're going to be moving on past this step, then go ahead and get a 5-channel amp. Even if you're only going to use it for a subwoofer for right now. Usually the price difference between a mid to low range 5-channel amp and a mid-level subwoofer amp is not going to be a big difference, but later on, you're going to probably wish you had got the 5-channel amp because it gives you a lot more flexibility for future upgrades. And usually, the 5-channel amp will come with anywhere from a 200 watt to 1,000 watt subwoofer output, which is plenty of power to do whatever you want. And once you wire that amp up, you never have to worry about wiring up another one to cover the other channels. So going to that is going to solve problems in the future. If you know for sure that you're not going to go past this step, then you could run either a powered subwoofer that fits into the area that you need to fit it into, or you could run a subwoofer with an enclosure and a separate monoblock amplifier. That would give you the power that you need to do the job. It still gives you the availability of adding a 4-channel amp later to amplify your other 4 channels. Once you've done this, you go on to step 3. Now, what is step 3? Step 3 is replacing the weakest link. And most likely it's going to be your head unit, but that's not always the case. So now you've already fixed what's wrong, nothing is broken, you've replaced the subwoofer, and you've either got a 1-channel amp or a 5-channel amp, but the system still isn't up to where you want it to be yet. What's the weakest link? Well, if it's your factory head unit that sounds like crap, you're going to want to replace that. Also, if the factory head unit sounds okay, but it doesn't have the features you want, it doesn't have Bluetooth, it doesn't have the ability to do multimedia in the car, it doesn't have something that you want, replacing the head unit will probably going to give you a big gain. So the weakest link is your head unit, replace that. If the weakest link is your door speakers and your dash speakers, then replace those. This is step 3. Of course, if you replace those, you'll probably want to, again, wish you had that 5-channel amp that you can go ahead and amplify those speakers instead of running them off of deck power. Deck power will definitely net you a less enjoyable experience. It's not going to give the drivers the power they need to do their job fully. They're going to be hampered somewhat by the low power output of your deck unit, your head unit. So you've done 3. Let's say you replaced your head unit. Now you want to move on to 4. 4 is going to be replacing whatever it was you did not replace in 3. You're next to the weakest link. And that's usually going to be your front stage or your door speakers and dash speakers. Now in this situation, there's a lot of directions you could go. You could replace them with the minimum, I would say, would be a coaxial driver in the location. So you have a little woofer and a tweeter together in that spot. You could also replace that factory driver with a single purpose driver. So if you've got a 6.5-inch hole, and you could put a coaxial driver there and call it good, or you could put a 6.5-inch woofer there and then mount a tweeter in the factory tweeter location. Or if you don't have a factory tweeter location, you could create one. You can mount it in the cell panel, the A pillar. There's lots of different locations. You could also mount them right there beside the 6.5 and the door. So if you don't have a factory location, you know, I would say that when it comes to tweeters, there's essentially 2 rules. One is get it as close as you can to the woofer, but at the same time, you want it to be the least obstructed. So if your woofer in your car is way down low at the very bottom of the door and your leg and everything else is in front of it, it might not be the good place for the tweeter. You know, your tweeter may need some help getting because it gets blocked by literally anything. You know, even something as simple as putting my hand in front of my mouth blocks those highs, makes the consonants hard to understand. So you can still hear the low frequency, but you can't hear the highs as well because just that stops them. And so being able to get the tweeter up in a higher location so that it can get over the top of that will give you a better overall sound. So your 2 rules is keep it as close to the woofer as you can, but get it to where it's high enough and clear enough to where it's not being impeded by much to get to your ear. I know, it's having your cake and eating it too. I get it. And some installations I've often done where I have a coaxial in my door, but then I add a second tweeter up high. And it's crazy talk. Nobody does things like that except for me because I like it, you know. Roll with what you like. But if you're going to run a component set, which is a tweeter and a mid, or a woofer mid tweeter, or a woofer mid tweeter, or any array of these things, then you're going to need to either have a passive crossover network to handle dispensing different frequencies to their respective driver, or you're going to need a DSP to be able to, and multiple channels. You'll need an output channel on your amplifier for every driver that you're going to use. So if you're going to run, say you're going to run a 3-stage front stage, so you got a woofer and a mid and a tweeter on both sides. That means you're going to need at least 6 channels just to handle that front, okay? Unless you use a passive crossover. If you're using a passive crossover, then you can send a signal from your amplifier, your single channel, to that crossover, and it can dispense the different frequencies to the drivers. You can also run a combination of both. So you can send a signal to a woofer separately, and then send another signal to a mid and tweeter on a passive crossover so that you get the mid and the tweeter controlled by one channel and the woofer controlled by another. So in that case, you could just use 4 channels to control the front. The point is, the more drivers you use, the more complicated it gets. But the more flexible it gets to tuning, and the better overall it's probably going to sound. The less drivers you use, the easier it will be, the less expensive it will be, but you're boxing yourself in on quality. You're only going to get to a certain point, and you're not going to be able to go past that because there's no flexibility in that install. Now, once you have chosen and decided on how you want to play that, and you have an amplifier with enough outputs, or multiple amplifiers with enough outputs to control all the different drivers that you need, you're going to move on to step 5. When you replace your very first driver and your door, at that point you need to, at bare minimum, install sound deadener around that driver location and behind that driver, just to keep vibrations from happening. And as you move through this process, everywhere you get metal exposed, things are vibrating, things are rattling, plastic's rattling. All of these elements, you need to try to address them. When you're in the front doors, putting drivers in there, which most people do, while you have that door panel off, sound deaden with the butyl, foil back butyl substrate, sound deadener. Do as much of that metal as you can without blocking any of the clips or any of the ports where wires have to come through. Close off a lot of those holes that you can, still leaving able for the mechanics of the door to function. Create as much of a sealed chamber in there as you can, and also stop that metal from making noise. If you knock on it with the sound deadener, it's going to sound like you're hitting wood. If no sound deadener, it's going to sound like you're hitting a tin can. So you want to get that wood sound. So you go around pecking on it. If you're getting a ring to it, you need some deadener on it. On all your little clips that hold your door panel on to the metal part of the door, the plastic part to the metal, those little punch-in clips, make sure that you replace any of them that's broken. So before you start the process, go on the internet and order yourself like a 50 count bag of those door clips that fit your car, because you will break them whenever you're working on it. If you have any that get damaged, even if they're still working but they're damaged, pull them off, replace them, put new ones on. When you do that, get a little piece of sound deadener, tear off a little strip and wrap it around, so that thing stays sturdy and doesn't have any rattly or wiggliness to it in the door or in the panel. And when you snap it together, it should be nice and solid, and when you bang on it with your hand, it shouldn't make any noise other than just the impact of your hand. Check every little clip, every little wire, every little cable, everything that can make noise. Figure out a way to make it quiet. Do that on your front doors while you have them apart. That way, whenever you get all this done, you don't have to go back in there again to do something that you should have already done. Guys, I know this is a long-winded talking head video, and I hope you guys understand that I'm doing the best I can to teach you how to make decisions and how to think about a process and how to step through a process to get what you're after. Because I can't tell every single person on the internet exactly what gear to use and exactly how to install it and all of these. This is impossible. What I can do is transfer some of the basic thinking knowledge and the thinking rules and the problem solving rules. I can pass that stuff on to you guys and make you critical thinkers, so you can look at what you're trying to do and figure out how to solve that problem with just a little extra tips and hints. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys. If it was, or even if it wasn't, if you think I'm a pretty cool guy or if you think I'm a butthead, it don't matter. Do me a favor and hit the subscriber button. It's predicting right here. How about that? It's right there. You see that thing? It's right there. Hit that. Anyway, guys, peace.